Okay, everyone, welcome to Women's Health and Nutrition. Actually, welcome to our webinar tonight for the first time. If you're on the webinar with me and I see some of you logging on, that's awesome. Tonight we have a great topic for you. It says Women's Health and Nutrition, but actually tonight is a closed group for Red Dress Campaign, as you know. Those of you that were part of the Red Dress Campaign, which was so successful, phenomenally successful in January, and right up until the end of June, we did another 8-week session on that for the phase 2. This is for you. So some of you may have heard some of this before. We're going to talk about snacking tonight and the 3 reasons why we eat, and helpful tips about controlling how you can control your snacking if you feel like it's out of hand. Some of you may have heard this before. If it's a refresher for you, then great, welcome. If you're hearing it for the first time, I'm recording this, so no worries, and we'll send it to you if you want to listen to it again. Tonight's session should probably be about 30 minutes, and if you're on the call again for the first time, welcome. If you haven't been on a webinar before, we have a lot of fun on the webinars. It's nice to interact. I just asked that if you have any questions, I'll do a quick question and answer period at the end. Just all you have to do is literally raise your hand virtually. You'll see the little box on the side there. I see people logging on. So just raise your hand at the end and I'll take some questions. So if you have any particular things that you want to add to the discussion or ask me about, I'm here. Okay. And again, this is the second of our 3-part webinar series. So the first one we, excuse me, did on Wednesday, July 1st. And that was Robin. Robin gave a wonderful, the Life Simple 7 for heart health. She did that a couple of weeks ago. Tonight I'm going to talk about snacking and helpful tips about why we eat and how to control out-of-control snacking. And in 2 weeks, it's going to be myself and another trainer. It's supposed to be Tracy and I, so we're going to be talking, again, probably about a food topic. So stay tuned for that. So, okay, well, we're going to start. So without further ado, tonight's topics are 3 reasons why we eat and tips for better snacking options. So again, if that's you, if you're on the webinar wondering, oh my gosh, I just feel like I eat 3 square meals a day, but it's the snacking that kills me. How can I stop myself from snacking? Then we've got hopefully some answers for you tonight. So we realize that that's something that when we interview our clients, and I've been training for 20 years now, all the trainers will tell you the same thing that are here working at Barbell. People struggle generally for other reasons besides the eating piece. So we're going to give you some tips for better snacking options, and some of those things are going to be emotional tips as to why you think you might be snacking. It may not necessarily be a hunger or a craving issue. So we'll get to that in a minute. So, okay. So, and again, no worries. We've got this will all be recorded, so you can take a look at it later. For some reason, you lose audio or what have you. I apologize if we lose audio on this. Sometimes it's been a little quirky, so let me know if there's any issues that you can always text me later or email me. So, all right, 2 items to consider when we're talking about eating. Really, there are only 3 reasons why we eat, and here they are. And it really boils down to these 3: hunger, craving, or habit. And in my 20 years of training, we've worked with women who want to exercise more, want to eat better, and if they're trying to get the nutrition under control, we talk about the 3 reasons why people eat, and people have always challenged me in different discussions that we've had. Well, I eat because I'm bored, or I eat because I'm X, Y, or Z, and I really have not ever found any one of the reasons why what they've come up with not to fall under one of these 3: craving, hunger, or habit. Now, the only exception to that would be if you are, eating for medical reason. Let's say you're going to take some medication, and the medication requires you to eat before you do that. So that would be the only exception to this rule. But really, if you're eating because you're bored, I'm really saying that's going to fall under habit most likely. It could possibly fall under craving. You have to identify that. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to give you some tips for trying to figure out why you are eating. And the times that you struggle, it's going to be imperative that you stop yourself and look at what's really happening when you're reaching for food that might not be the best option for you at any given time. We're going to ask you to say, is it a craving Am I really hungry? Or could it just be habitual eating at this particular time? So, okay. So, and again, to recap what I just said. So we're going to ask you too as we go through, we're going to give some particular information, but as we get to the end of the webinar, we want you to think about the actual times of the day or night that you snack. We've had everything as we train people, we've had everyone from getting up in the middle of the night and eating at 2 o'clock while watching TV, to the general that we hear all the time. I come home at 3, a lot of teachers, I come home at 3 o'clock and now I'm ravenous, and I just end up eating so much, and then I eat supper, and then I'm just so full, and I just end up eating too much at that snack time. I'm not really hungry in the morning, but by 3 o'clock I'm ravenous, yada yada. So we want you to think about the times when you just feel like you have no control over your eating or snacking. Okay, and the second piece to that is what types of snacks attract you. So, are they salty? Are they sweet? Are they, bread oriented? Are they carb? What are you craving? Because that says a lot about what's happening throughout the day with you. It can also say a lot about you, not only physiologically, but, brain functions. How are you feeling? Your mood, your emotions. So there's a lot that plays into the picture. So the first thing you do have to do, though, is keeping in mind that there are only 3 reasons why you eat. If you're reaching for food that you know may not be good for you, then you have to stop for a minute. I'm not saying don't eat it. I'm just saying stop and try to determine which it is, craving, hunger, or habit. And we're going to go through some of the things that you could possibly be dealing with when you actually decide whether you can categorize it or not. So, hey, if you're out there, is it not raining like cats and dogs, huh? Today's July 15th. It's Wednesday night at 6:30. Well, now it's about 6:35, but it is. I'm here at the gym in my office, and it is just crazy. People were coming in for Body Flow, and Body Vibe was just ending, and they were running out the door, man. It is. I'm looking out the window. It's just crazy out there. So I hope people haven't lost power or anything at home. But all right. So if it's hunger, here's the first reason: eat. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? If you're hungry, you need to eat. We're going to talk about some of the best choices for eating as we go along in some of the succeeding slides. But obviously, consider your calories. Your proteins and carbohydrates, I'll talk about that in a minute, are part of the equation as well. And don't forget, of course, many of you, we talked about sodium quite a bit in the first 12 weeks, but in the second 8 weeks, it might have been review for some of you. So if you're not sure about sodium, you might want to, take it up with one of the trainers or email us and get some of those numbers for what you should be eating, what we recommend for sodium milligrams per day. Okay, so if it's hunger, eat. But again, you want to, now this is of course considering you have a heart rate monitor or a Fitbit of some type or some type of register so that you know how many calories you do burn a day. Okay, so if you don't have that, that's of course step 1. And if you need some input on what to get or what actual devices you need to actually get your calorie count, then again, see one of the trainers, see myself, shoot me an email after the webinar, ask a question, whatever you need to do. So remember that quickness often dictates our snacks, so be careful, because oftentimes the grab and goes can be those high sodium items like chips, the crackers. They're oftentimes the low fat snacks that we can have that can be very high in sodium and sugar. So you want to be careful with that if you're reaching for those all the time. Okay, so we want to, of course, always be looking at the grand scheme of things and how many calories we ate for the day or how many calories we think we will eat for the day if we're morning snacking. So lots play into the picture. Lots play into the picture. And if some of you are thinking, oh my God, this is too much to remember. I can't do this much planning. I just eat. Well, if that's where you're coming from, then, I've said this a million times before to many of the groups that I speak to face-to-face. If you don't want to track and you're not interested in planning, then you're pretty much telling me that you don't care what's in your checkbook. You're just going to spend willy-nilly, regardless of whether you have the money or not. It's really that simple. We try to boil it down to something, that's, real to you. We talk about money. Would you just go out and, go to the store and use your debit card and spend, thousands of dollars if you didn't know if you had that in your checking account. Well, but yet we do it every day. We eat and eat and eat. We don't know what the calorie counts on things are. We don't know what we burn in a day, whether we, have those calories to spare, so on and so forth. So if you don't want to do the work, then you're basically saying, you're not interested in getting healthier. So, and if that's you, listen, no judgment, but, I assume you're on the webinar because you're looking for some help. So as we go along, we certainly want to do that for you as help. Now, 3 reasons why we eat. If it's craving, well, that's a whole different ball game. So remember that craving can often be associated with being tired, being fatigued, doing too much, overscheduling yourself, the exhaustion that comes with day-to-day life that's out of control. So, we do a lot with this when we talk with our clients one-on-one, and even a little bit in semi-private, small group. We talk about gaining control of your life, because that, my friends, is really step one. If you can't gain control of your life, then food is almost secondary. Oftentimes we use food, and as women we use food as a safety mechanism, a comfort mechanism. So, but what are we comforting ourselves from? We have to ask that first. So food and cravings are often so emotionally tied together. So if you're craving, you got to make sure, take a look at your life. That's the key first. First identify, am I craving food? And then look at, what's going on. Oftentimes cravings can be hormone related. So, there's nothing we can do about that sometimes. I know many of us are, myself, I'm 48, I'm perimenopausal right now. And, sometimes as I'm close to periods, I do, you really do feel huge sweet and salt cravings. Those are real, those are hormone based. So we got to acknowledge that, but watch our portions. I can crave salt, but I don't need to eat a bag of potato chips. I can crave sugar, but I don't have to have, half a dozen donuts. You know what I mean? You get the idea. So keep in mind, and we're going to get to these slides in a minute, that acknowledge the craving, but keep in mind, your portion controls, your proteins and your carb allotments that you've given yourself for the day. Don't let the planning come out of the picture. Okay. Now, if it's habit, again, yet another emotional tied reason why we eat. So, and this is sometimes more difficult to determine because habit can really be involved and intertwined in so many other different parts of our life. If you're eating because you habitually eat at a particular time, again, you've really got to sit back and explore the why of the habitualness of that eating, snacking, eating, what have you. Let me give you an example. A couple of years back, I was talking to a client who I'd known for years, and we were trying to get to the root of why she had really kind of hit a plateau in her weight loss. And previous to that, her weight loss had been really quite, successful. She had plummeted down in a very, reasonable amount of time, but she'd lost a decent amount of weight. And she said to me, well, I just can't seem to, my husband and I go out a lot on the weekends, and we visit friends all the time. And this one group of friends, I just, the husbands are really friends, and the wives, we like each other, but we're not really the friends. The husbands are friends. So I find when we go to these people's house, and we hang out often, and I apologize for the thunder in the background here. Sheesh. At any rate, getting back to my story, she said, the women tend to be in the kitchen and we're chatting, and just by, reason of the fact we're all kind of sitting together, I find myself just eating. We have, chips and salsa and all kinds of stuff. She said, I just feel like I'm eating. I'm not even hungry, Carrie, she'll say to me, or she said to me. She said, I'm just eating mindlessly. And I said, well, what's going on there? Is it habitual eating? You always have, junk food when you get together with these couples? And she said, well, I have to be honest, I'm really not crazy about some of the women. They're okay, but I'm really kind of bored with the conversation. So I said, there might be something. So we kind of got her to really kind of drill down a little bit and figure out that she was eating because it was really with a group of people she wasn't really crazy about, and she spent decent amount of time with them, these couples, other couples, and the men were really the friends, but not the women. So at any rate, she was habitually eating just for boredom. So, scale back and look at, the whys of why you're eating, things you may not want to eat, especially if you had a good day. Now you spend a Saturday night eating chips all night and you've had a decent day. You worked out in the morning and, you don't want to blow it. So, I said to her, well, can you bring, some carrot sticks and hummus and maybe some things that are a little bit less sodium laden, maybe a little bit better for you for snacks? She said, yeah, sure, I could do that. I said, well, why don't you? And, hopefully she did going forward. But it's this type of thing. I tell you the story to illustrate the examples of just, the things that we do so ropely, we don't even realize we're doing it. So we have to sometimes step back and ask ourselves why. So look at your whole day as you reach for a snack at a certain time. Look at, have you gone long periods without eating throughout the day? So are you hungry, or is it, habitual time, or, some people always, when you sometimes you drive by a certain store, you always have to stop and have a snack at that particular store. So look at, is it something you always did? Is it something you always trained yourself to do? And maybe you need to change a pattern. Okay, and those things, they don't change that easily. I do get that. Changing patterns is difficult, but in order to change patterns, I always say nothing changes if nothing changes. You really have to step back and explore why you're in a certain pattern. And that certainly takes time. So habits are often stress related. We all know that. Take a look at exactly what you're feeling as you reach for any particular food or snack that you think is maybe not the best choice for you. So lots of emotional pieces tied with habit and craving. Okay, hunger, of course, is something different. If you're hungry, like we said, eat. So, all right. So overall, when snacking, you gotta keep Tom's top of mind on your proteins and carbohydrate ratios. And again, if you don't know these numbers off the top of your head, we're going to help you through it as we go along. And if you don't know them once we go along, then you got to commit them to memory. You got to get a heart rate monitor, you got to get a Fitbit, whatever you're going to do that's going to take a look at your own calories. And while I'm on that subject, people tell me all the time, well, I'll ask my clients, well, do you know, when we start off with our intake, we'll say, do you know how many calories you burn in a day? And most of them will say, well, FitnessPal told me X, Y, or Z. I'll say, okay, well, did you actually get a reading somewhere? Oh, no, it just said based on my height, my weight, my activity level, that's how many calories I burned in a day, or how many calories I should burn. And I always say, okay, that may in fact be true based on the average woman, your age, your weight, your height, and your activity level, all of which you program into FitnessPal, which is a food tracker app online. It's a free app if you don't know what it is. It's myfitnesspal.com if you're looking for it. I always say that's great, but you really need to get your own calories. So I'll give you a quick example. A couple of years back, I was doing a big, large group training in the winter, a couple of years back now, and I had two women who were in their early to mid-30s. And they both were probably, I'm going to guess, about 50, 60 pounds overweight. Both of them needed to lose they were looking to lose in their 12 weeks, anywhere between 20 and 25 pounds, which is pretty reasonable over the 12-week session that we were running. Now, each of them, again, same age, about the same weight, maybe one was a little taller than the other, but their activity levels were pretty similar. One was a young mom, one was a gal who had no children but worked a pretty active job. So both of them were fairly active throughout the day. Just to give you an example, again, same profile on paper, so FitnessPal is going to see that age, shape, size, activity level. One of them burned about 3,500 calories a day when we actually put a heart rate monitor on her, and the other one burned about 1,700 calories a day. So there's a big swing there. So you get where I'm going with this. So if you don't know your actual calorie burn based on your heart rate, then you may be kidding yourself a little bit with the guesstimates that free apps like MyFitnessPal might provide for you. So be careful with that because, obviously as we gave them each guidance in their food, I might have told each of them to bring it down to, 2,500 calories a day, and the person who was burning 3,700 would have been fine, but the poor gal who was only burning 1,700 would have been eating over her calories for the day. So you got to be careful with that, okay? So questions on Fitbits and heart rate monitors, shoot them at me. No worries. We'll help you with that. All right. So one of the things we want to take a look at whether we're eating a regular meal or whether we're snacking. We're always looking at our proteins versus our carbohydrates. So I'm going to take a look at proteins first. So types of proteins are important, okay? Obviously, you've got good proteins and you've got better, best proteins. So everything we do from carbs to proteins are good, better, best. Our good proteins are your nuts. I mean, they're proteins, but they're also fats. Your dairy products, again, proteins, but they're also fats, so you got to be careful. Your fatty meats, cheese, bacon, your hamburger, deli meats, not my first choice for clients, but I'm not naive enough not to think that people don't have a ham sandwich for lunch every day, and it's okay. I'd rather see you have a ham sandwich than nothing and come home and, eat the house down because you're starving because you didn't eat anything for lunch. But these are good proteins. They're not our best choices. Our peanut butters, our almond butters, all of these types of butters that are out now. So be careful because they're also fats in them as well. Okay. All of a sudden my laptop is making noise. I hope everyone's still okay out there. And we've got better, best proteins. And these are going to be more your meats, your lean pork, your chicken. And by chicken, I mean your fresh chicken, not your frozen chicken. So I know it could be frozen, but it's going to be like a Perdue type of chicken that you get in a package, not the big bags of chicken that are frozen you'd get at BJ's or a Sam's Club. I used to get those when I was bodybuilding, but they're really not the best option. You really want to get fresh chicken from the grocery store. Reason being is the frozen one in those big bags that you get in the freezer section of Sam's and BJ's are really, washed and preserved in huge sodium baths. So they're not the greatest option, and there's a lot of fillers in them. So be careful with that. You really want to get fresh organic chickens if you can. And incidentally, that type of chicken, which I'm referring to, the BJ's and the Sam's and the big bag, are the types of chicken you're going to get on your salad at Applebee's or Panera or one of those. So sometimes, we got to be careful there too. But that's a whole other lecture, eating out, eating right. So fish, all your fish, excellent. Tofu, outstanding choices. So these are your good, better, best proteins. These are your low sodium, cleanest proteins that you can have, non-fatty proteins. Okay, so these are the best proteins that you're going to eat. My only caveat is be aware of the toppings and sauces sometimes. If you're eating a nice fresh piece of fish and you've got 40 pounds of Ritz cracker topping on top of it, then you're kind of defeating the purpose a little bit. So with a real high fat and oily cracker on top of it, as your topping. So be careful with that type of thing too. Try to use salsas and fresh vegetables as your toppings. Maybe, if you're going to use, different sauces and things, make them from scratch. Know what's in them. Keep them to a minimum as far as when you, put them across meats, okay, or baste them. All right. Here's your protein ratios too. So if you miss this on the first Red Dress campaign, your ratio should be, your proteins should be about 30% of your diet, your total calories for the day. You can use the formula, take your total calories times your 30% or 0.30. Then you're going to divide by 4 because on FitnessPal, everything's in grams. Okay, so to get the grams per day that you should be eating. So, and again, if you missed this, I'm going to move on with this slide because I'm going to explain it a little further. So if you're taking notes, no worries. Okay, so I'm going to scoot. Here it is again, a little bit better format. So let's give you an example on a 1,500 calorie a day diet. If we're saying we recommend 30%, it's not our recommendation, by the way. This is the American, the ADA, so the American Dietary Association. So if your proteins are recommended 30% of your total daily calories, 1,500 times your 30% or 0.30 equals 450 calories of proteins. So of your 1,500, 450 calories should be what you're going to eat for the day. Now, if you want to churn that to grams, then that means 4 calories in every 1 gram of protein. You're going to do the division. So you take your 450 total calories, divide by 4, and you should be eating around 112 grams a day of protein if you are eating around 1,500 calories a day of total food, okay? Now, my experience with most of my clients is that when I look at clients' food out of the gate, when I do my initial intake with them, most people are only eating, most women are only eating between 25 and 46 grams of protein a day. So most people are not coming anywhere near that 112 grams of good proteins. And again, you want to refer back to your good, better, best. I don't want to see eating 112 grams of protein if it's lunch meat, and bacon. So you want to make sure that over that 112 grams are some good proteins, like your chickens and your fishes and that type of thing. So if you're not anywhere near that 112 grams of protein, I say start small. Start with, if you're around 40 grams of protein, can you bump it to 85? If you're there, can you bump it close to 100? So, 85 to 100 grams of protein a day on a 1,500 calorie a day diet, which is pretty average for most women that we train, is sometimes more realistic. Okay, so, take it from there. Okay, and I'll leave that up for just a minute if some of you are writing that down. Remember, I am recording this, so no worries, you can go back to it. All right, so lastly, we're almost done. Thanks for hanging on with me. Carbohydrates, they are not the enemy. I hear this all the time. New clients come into the gym and they're, oh my God, what should I do, Kara? I need to lose weight, and I'm going to go on a cruise in 3 weeks, and I should just not eat any bread, right? And I always say, well, let's, you can eat bread, but, you don't need to eat a loaf of it every night. It's all in moderation. It's about seeing the big picture and then making decisions based on how your needs fit into the big picture. And the big picture is knowing, number one, how many calories you burn a day. Number two, knowing how many calories you're presently eating and what they're made of. How many proteins, how many carbs. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll say to a person, we'll sit down and I'll say, well, what did you have for proteins today in an initial intake? And she'll say, I had an orange. And I'm like, an orange is not a protein. So it starts with the schooling first, knowing the big picture, okay, what you're eating and what you're burning, and then going from there. What are your goals? Are you running a marathon? Are you training for the Spartan race? Are you just simply trying to get a little fitter? Are you a grandmother who'd like to be able to, run around with her grandchildren a little bit, put a little muscle on your arms? Are you someone who struggles with, osteoporosis or osteopenia, the early osteo conditions, and you're trying to, get a little stronger and eat a little better? So it all depends on, we train people with all different types of, needs. So, carbs are not the enemy. If you're out doing a 2-hour bike ride like I did a couple of days ago, you need some carbohydrates. That's where, your ATP storage is going to come from the glucose that's going to be broken down from the carbohydrates that you eat, the bagel you have in the morning, the small piece of bread, the rice from the night before that you have with your chicken. So, carbs are not the enemy. And by the way, when I talk about carbs, we're not just talking about all of those starchy carbs. Don't forget, fruits and vegetables are carbs as well. So, of course, who's going to take those out of their diet? You shouldn't be doing that anyway. So, glycemic index is the key, GI, when you talk about carbs. So, in proteins, we talk about good, better, best. But when we talk about carbohydrates, we're talking about the glycemic index when you make your good, better, best choices. And this is what they mean. I'm going to bring the whole slide up. So, the glycemic index is just a measure of how quickly blood sugar levels rise after eating any particular food. High GIs versus low GIs are the breakdown, okay, of the glucose. So high GIs are carbs that break down quicker and release that glucose into your bloodstream. So that's why they say, you want to eat pasta the night before when you're doing a road race, or, when you need lots of cardio stamina. You want to eat some higher GIs carbs, where the lower ones are the ones that break down slower and release slower into your bloodstream, so you don't get that that rush, and then that you want things not to turn to fat. Okay. That's the key. So we want that slower breakdown, not the quick breakdown, because if you're not using that carb right away, that's what will happen. It will store as fat. So if you're not doing the workout, you want to eat some lower glycemic index carbohydrates. Okay, so we're going to give you some examples of that. Let's bring everything up here. So you've got high glycemic index would be your starchy carbs, your whites, meaning breads, rices, pastas, potatoes. Breakfast cereals, I'm not a big fan, but because they're so high in sugar often. But I know a lot of people do like to eat cereals in the morning. Donuts, bagels. I'm not advocating donuts, but just understand cookies, things like that. The sugar content, okay, in your carbohydrates. Low GIs are your fruits, your veggies, your beans, your plain oatmeals, your wheat side, the breads, the basmati rices, your salads, okay. So again, these are your low glycemic index. So these are the ones you really want to try to eat if you have a traditional schedule, more as the day goes on. So if you work a pretty normal day and you're coming home and eating supper around 5, 6 o'clock, your lower GI carbohydrates should be what you eat at night, because you're not going to use them as much. You're going to go to bed, obviously. Your higher glycemic index carbs can be eaten more in the morning if you have a traditional day, because you're going to burn through those. All right, so good, better, best does apply to carbs. And again, now we're looking at here's your formula for carbs. 60% of your diet should really be carbs. Okay, when I say carbs, again, we're talking about a nice balance of the high and the low glycemic index carbs, not just donuts and cookies. So 60% versus your 30% of proteins. On a 1,500 calorie a day diet, again, it's going to be 60% of that, or 0.60 gives you 900 calories total of carbs on that 1,500. Lastly, if you want to turn it into the grams, because you're on that FitnessPal or some tracking device that usually gives you grams, not to mention labels give you grams. Okay, so you want to have that connection. So again, 4 calories per gram of carb, just like proteins, and you've got that 900 calories turned into 225 grams of carbs per day. So if you're looking at the grams, there's your conversion. Okay, so again, questions? I hope everyone's getting understanding the difference here. And you got to do this work. I mean, it's not easy. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes planning. No, it's not easy. But if you want to gain optimum health for long term, not just to go on that cruise and I got to run a road race, or I got to meet, go to my reunion and in June or whatever, or so-and-so's wedding. If you really want optimum health for life, forever, you need to start putting the checkbook together. You got to see how much money you make. It's budgeting. And how much money you're going to allow yourself to spend. What savings are you going to make? I mean, your body's no different. All right, your homework, because I'm just about done here. Thanks for hanging on with me. I think I went over the half hour just a little bit. But your homework until the next webinar, which is July 29th, is I want you to keep, that is provided you are recording daily calories. If you're not, then start. I'll change that word keep to start. And lastly, keep recording daily food. So, daily calories, daily food. What are you burning? What are you eating? It's that simple. Okay? And the other piece is, if you're just beginning the journey, you need to stop yourself if you're struggling. And every time you eat and say, what's happening here? Am I really hungry? Am I craving something? Or am I eating at a habitual time I always eat, connected to an emotional feeling or state that always comes with this when I reach for that donut, or I reach for that glass of wine, or I reach for the chips and salsa, or whatever it is that you're dying for, that hamburger out and fries. Okay? So what is it that's not in control at any given time when you reach to eat out of habit? Okay, so the beginning of the journey starts with the exploration, the finding out the whys. If you can't find out the whys, you can't even get to the top of here, daily calories and daily food. Then it just becomes rote. You want to understand the whys. The whys of everything you do. Okay, gals, questions? Anybody's got anything to say out here? I don't see any. This is pretty basic stuff. I know some of you heard this a million times, so I don't want to keep you on the webinar too long, but If for some reason you have a question you're afraid to ask, or you don't, you're afraid to actually talk because we'll be able to hear you. It does scare people a little bit. You can simply send me an email. You know it, kmac67, that's KMAC67 at AOL.com. Or, obviously all the Red Dress campaign participants are connected to the gym somehow. Many of you are not present members, but you can always call the gym, ask any questions, write to me, whatever you want to do, okay? So please stay in touch if you're not a present gym member. Some of you aren't. If you are a gym member, don't be afraid to stop me. We got lots of great things happening throughout the month of July and August. So know that we're going to be having a little cookout happening in August for all of the Red Dress participants. So stay active in our email loop and check for that. If there aren't any questions, and I don't see any with their hand raised, don't forget about 7/29. We have one more webinar coming at you, and that's going to be about eating again and nutritional topics. Okay, I can't remember offhand what exactly it's about. So, but jump on. It'll be Tracy and I giving a nice webinar. You know her; she's always so entertaining. So, all right, gals. If there aren't any questions, I wish you all a great night. Drive safe. It's looking a little better out there, but it's still ugly. So, okay. Until next time. 7/29. Have a great 2 weeks. Okay, gang. Have a good one.